Hi, this is Carl again from Lingua Genesis, and what I want to talk about in this particular video is the use of mnemonics or memory aids to teach modern foreign languages. Now, I've often wondered and still do wonder why so many language learners feel as though mnemonics are in fact completely useless. Many of my own learners will say to me, that's completely cheesy, I'll give the mnemonic, which will hopefully help them to remember any particular word, and then will be greeted by a response such as, this is pathetic, this is silly, oh my god, etc. Now, when I first started to teach modern foreign languages on a full-time basis, and we're going back to 2004, I personally was quite fond of using mnemonics, not only to teach myself, but also to teach languages to other people as well. But then, due to the responses which I got from many of my learners, such as, oh my god, or oof, and so forth, I then got the impression that maybe mnemonics weren't a suitable method, mainly due to the response which was received from them. I think one of the other reasons as well as to why so many people have taken a dislike towards a number of mnemonics is the fact that if, for example, you go onto particular internet websites or web pages and you start reading up about ways in which you can learn isolated pieces of vocabulary, then more often than not you will be greeted by at least one mnemonic. Now, obviously that doesn't apply to every website which gives information as regards how you can learn isolated pieces of vocabulary, but there are indeed examples of websites which feature, let's say, a number of words, memory aids or mnemonics which will help you to remember those words, and quite often, although not always, some of those memory aids are accompanied by a visual image. Obviously, some memory aids are better than others. Sometimes you can put together sentences. Let's say, for example, here's one. If you want to know the Spanish word for here, you can say, here is a key for the back door. Now, obviously that's not quite cheesy because aquí, spelled A-Q-U-R, the Spanish word for here, has the same sound as the English two-word phrase a and key, obviously A and then K-E-Y. So those kinds of mnemonics aren't necessarily all that too bad. The mnemonics which I think get the worst types of response are those which are mutations of certain words. Here's one I came up with to remember the Spanish for red wine, which can be shortened from vino tinto to just tinto. And it was one which I came up for people from the region, from South Yorkshire, where I live, and it was tinto red wine, it's a whiten. In other words, it isn't a red wine, it's a whiten. And obviously we've changed from standard Oxford English to Broad Yorkshire, tinto or tinto, red wine, it's a whiten. So we're mutating the standard English language to try to find a mnemonic for the Spanish word for wine. But over the course of the last few months or so, I've noticed that the more mnemonics I've tried to put together, the more that learners have started to take to them, because they now realise just how useful mnemonics can be in being able to retain vocabulary. And many people do arguably struggle in learning isolated pieces of vocabulary. But what I think we have to try to do is to focus on mnemonics which will help us to remember those words which are most common in the language. And what I'm going to do in part 2 is to give you a list which I've come up with for learning a set of Spanish words. And in due course, what I aim to do is to extend the number of mnemonics which I've put together and to hopefully release a publication. Hopefully one which will not be greeted and received with too much unpleasantness.